A 13-year-old girl named Amanda Jane Dowler, affectionately known as Millie by her friends and family, usually took the train to Hersham after attending school in Weybridge, Surrey. But on March 21, 2002, as Millie embarked on her journey home from school around 3 p.m., something awful happened along the way, and she never reached home. Hours later, when the clock struck 7 in the evening and Millie still hadn't come home, her family grew worried. They informed the police department of Surrey about the incident and reported Millie as a missing person. What really happened to Millie? Was the loving schoolgirl ever going to come back home? Welcome back to Mysterious Hook, where we shed light on under-the-radar cases across the country. Today, our focus is on the 2002 mysterious disappearance of 13-year-old Millie Dowler. As we dive deeper into this chilling case, we will also learn about the complications and the secrets connected to this story. But first, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please hit the subscribe and like buttons. Now, without any further ado, let's dive into this story. Walton-on-Thames is a market town in the northwestern region of Surrey County, England. Walton rests on the south bank of Thames in the borough of Elmbridge, which is quite close to central London. The town is extremely friendly, warm, and welcoming. With pretty riverside homes and excellent schools, Walton has been listed as one of the best places to live in. Talking about the crime rate, Walton-on-Thames is the second most dangerous major town in Surrey, facing a significantly high number of violent crimes. And not so surprisingly, one of the most disheartening crimes took place in Walton back in 2002. Amanda Jane Dowler, or Millie Dowler as she was known by her family and friends, was born on June 25, 1988, to the happy couple of Bob and Sally Dowler. Millie also had an older sister named Gemma, whom she adored and looked up to. The girls got on extremely well and were practically best friends.
Friendly, very approachable. She always had a twinkle in her eyes, and she just was an infectious person that everybody wanted to be around. Once you met her for the first time, you automatically wanted to be her friend.
Being the youngest in her family, Millie was brought up with extra love and care, which contributed to her becoming a kind and generous person. Gemma described her sister as friendly and vivacious, with a sparkle in her eye. During the early 2000s,
Millie Dowler's disappearance, one of the most notorious of the last decade.
Millie attended Heathside School in Weybridge, Surrey, and being the bubbly girl she was, she made a lot of friends, but one of them stood out in particular. Millie met Hannah McDonald on a school trip to Germany in 2002, and both the girls instantly became friends. In the following years at school, Millie and Hannah became inseparable. They would do everything together, whether it was homework, shopping, or simply lunch. Hannah and Millie became a part of each other's families. By this time, Millie had developed a keen interest in music.
Millie's family had to wait 6 months to recover her body, and all this time later they finally know who did it.
This was an incredibly emotional moment for the Dowler family.
Millie loved spending time playing the saxophone, often with her close friends around. Millie was a bright light in the lives of those around. She loved to cheer others up when they were having a bad day, and did that effortlessly. On Thursday, March 21, 2002, Millie said goodbye to Hannah and left Heathside School in Weybridge, Surrey. At 3:07 p.m., she walked to Weybridge railway station with another friend that day. The two girls got off at the Walton-on-Thames railway station. This was one stop before Hersham, which was Millie's usual stop for her journey home. Millie and her friend had decided to grab a bite together at the station cafe before going home. They just wanted to enjoy a conversation over some good food. Once they were done, Millie called up her father at 3:47 p.m. and informed him about the delay. Before hanging up, she promised him that she would be back home in the next 30 minutes. By 4:05, Millie and her friend parted ways and set off home. Unfortunately, only one of the girls made it home that evening. Millie's family awaited her arrival, but hours went by and there were no signs of her. As each minute passed, the Dowlers grew more and more worried about their youngest.
And then I got in at about, I think it was like 5 o'clock. Dad was in the office and I was like, "Where's Millie?" And then he was like, "Oh, she's supposed to be home by now. I thought you would have picked her up." And then as soon as I heard Dad say she's not home, I was just like, "Oh God." I don't know whether it was like sisterly instinct, but I definitely knew I was never going to see her again.
Tension had already started to set in, and soon, Millie's family were sure that something awful had happened. At 7 p.m., Bob, Millie's father, called up the authorities in Sussex and reported Millie as missing. Detective Chief Superintendent Craig Denholm from the police department of Sussex pulled together a team and led a massive search for Millie. The team included dozens of helicopters and more than 100 police officers searching the fields, streets, and rivers around Hersham. Even the detectives who had earlier worked on abduction cases were called in for help. A week after Millie's disappearance, the police had gathered a few facts related to Millie's disappearance. Millie was last seen around 4:10 p.m. by a friend of Gemma, Millie's sister, when she was waiting at the bus stop. Gemma's friend stated that she recognized Millie when she saw her walking along Station Avenue. Even though there was a CCTV camera located further along the road, it showed no images of Millie. This indicated that Millie had disappeared within minutes after crossing the bus stop. A car, specifically a red Daewoo Nexia, was photographed driving past the same camera at 4:32 p.m., just 20 minutes after Millie was last seen. Although there was no proof that this car had anything to do with Millie's disappearance, the detectives found it suspicious. Police and the Dowler family together made appeals to the media for information about their missing girl, Millie. Millie's parents were interviewed many times, where they urged people to be on the lookout for Millie and come forward if they have any information which could lead them to her. But sadly, these appeals and interviews were in vain. While nothing helpful came from those interviews, the police started to look at other possibilities. They stated that there was a high chance that Millie was probably not taken by force. They were so sturdy that Millie might have run away on her own will, not necessarily with someone. They backed this theory up by stating that even though a number of people had seen Millie before she went missing, nobody had seen her being in a struggle with anyone. Sally Dowler, Millie's mother, only hoped that her daughter had run away, as it was much better than all the other grim possibilities that occupied her head. However, Sally could not think of a reason why Millie would want to run away. On April 23, 2002, the detectives were informed by the discovery of a body in River Thames, Walton. The news prompted the media to speculate that the remains might be those of Millie. However, the body was identified the following day as that of a 73-year-old woman named Maisie, who went missing in March 2001. An investigation was probed into Maisie's case as well, and her death was not believed to be suspicious. By the time it was June 2002, the police were working extensively searching for Millie. A national tabloid newspaper, The Sun, even offered a reward of £100,000 available for anyone who could lead the authorities to Millie, but sadly the reward was never claimed. Despite their tireless efforts, the detectives found no clues which could help them locate Millie. On June 25, 2002, it was Millie's 14th birthday, but she remained missing. By the end of that month, the police told Millie's parents that there was a high chance that Millie was dead. In the months that followed Millie's fading investigation, something strange happened. Millie's family and the detectives monitored Millie's phone, trying to locate it, but instead, they observed some suspicious activity in Millie's voicemail box. They noted that Millie's voicemails were being listened to and deleted. In a time when Millie's family was almost convinced that she was dead, the voicemail activity gave them a ray of hope that maybe Millie is still alive and hiding somewhere. For once, after months, the Dowler family could imagine being reunited with Millie. Bob and Sally, Millie's parents, started sending text and voicemails to Millie's phone, thinking that someday she would reply, telling them about her current condition. However, all hopes the Dowlers had gathered were brutally shattered on September 18, 2002. A few mushroom pickers passing through Yateley Heath Woods, near Yateley, Hampshire, discovered a cold and lifeless body. The body didn't have a single article of clothing on it, and it seemed like nobody had tried to bury the remains at all. Police closed the roads next to the site where the remains were found. Police officers suspected that the remains to be of Millie. They formed teams, and while some made sure the area was well guarded and secure, the others began a thorough search of the woods. Although a full forensic examination of the scene and the surrounding area was carried out to recover any evidence, no items that Millie had with her at the time of her disappearance, such as her clothing, purse, rucksack, or mobile phone, were ever recovered. However, on September 20, 2002, everyone's worst fears came true when the dental records examined by a forensic expert confirmed the remains to be of the missing 13-year-old schoolgirl, Millie Dowler.
24 hours later, police confirmed that the remains were those of the missing schoolgirl.
She compared the remains found in Yateley Heath Wood yesterday with the dental records of Amanda Dowler. We can now confirm the results of the examination was almost certainly those of the missing Amanda.
But due to the severity of the decomposition, Millie's cause of death could not be determined, but police were sure it was murder. Sometime after verifying the medical examiner's report, the police officers informed Millie's family of the horrific discovery. Bob, Sally, and Gemma's hearts were shattered to the core.
I was in the house and my mum was in the garden. And then my mum just collapsed and I was just like, oh my goodness. That was just the worst feeling because there's absolutely nothing you can do. I can't console her. My dad couldn't console her. All she wanted was Millie back and no one could do anything to help that. Well, we all did.
The news broke out and the media covered the full story, spreading it across the whole nation. Thousands of people mourned that day, expressing their sorrow over losing Millie. A couple of weeks later, in October 2002, Millie's family organized a memorial service for her. Dozens gathered in the lawn in front of Millie's school, dropping flowers and paying tributes to Millie. Millie was then laid to rest in Joaquin Crematorium in Joaquin Borough, Surrey, on March 21, 2003, exactly a year from the day she disappeared. The discovery of Millie's body led the police to reclassify the case as a homicide investigation, undertaken again by Surrey Police. The investigation was codenamed Operation Ruby. On November 22, 2002, the detectives set up a roadblock near the spot where Millie's body was discovered. The Surrey Police Department didn't want to leave any stones unturned, and hence re-examined the crime scene and the surrounding area to make sure they didn't miss anything out. They questioned around 6,000 motorists in the area, but no new clues or leads were discovered. Knowing that in cases such as Millie's, a family member could most likely be the perpetrator, they even considered Bob Dowler, Millie's father, a suspect. However, this string of investigation was quickly dropped, as there was no evidence linking Bob to Millie's murder. The detectives apologized for the missed opportunities their attention to this track may have caused. On March 23, 2003, detectives discovered the DNA of an unidentified male on one of Millie's clothes found in her bedroom. This gave detectives the impression that Millie's killer might have met her before, but just within 3 months, this link was ruled out by the detectives. They never shared the reason behind this decision. Even after the discovery of Millie's body, the Dowler family's suffering didn't end. The investigation into Millie's case was turning out to be a frustrating one for the detectives, but mostly for Millie's family. Beginning in 2003 itself, Millie's family and the detectives started receiving misleading and false information. This insensitive and foolish behavior not only hurt the Dowler family's sentiments, but also made the investigators go around in circles and lose valuable time. Gemma, Millie's older sister, started receiving some mischievous letters. In these letters, an unidentified person with a mischievous tone claimed to have killed Millie. He even went on to give death threats to Gemma, warning that she too would meet the same fate as her sister. Even though Gemma was in a fragile state of mind, she didn't hesitate to report these letters to the authorities. The detectives were quick to follow up and nab the author of those nasty letters. He was identified as a man named Paul Hughes. It was confirmed that he had no relation to either Gemma or Millie. Paul had sent those letters to Gemma while he was already imprisoned for indecently assaulting a 12-year-old girl. The prison service later apologized for not screening the mail effectively. Paul was convicted for his crimes against Gemma, and was given an additional sentence of 5 years behind bars. Around the same time that year, a woman named Leanne Newman of Tewkesbury, Gloucestershire, repeatedly phoned Millie's parents, school, and the police. Over the phone calls, Leanne pretended to be Millie. In April 2003, she was jailed for 5 months after pleading guilty to 5 counts of making phone calls to cause annoyance, inconvenience, or needless anxiety. Every time Bob, Sally, and Gemma Dowler tried to put behind Millie's tragic death and move on with their lives, some maniac would show up and shatter their healing process. For the Dowlers, it was like someone was rubbing salt on their wounds. On July 6, 2005, a man named Levi Belfield caught the attention of the detective's eyes. Levi was a tall, hefty man in his early 30s back in 2005, who was born and raised in southwest London. Levi Belfield was also a serial killer who had been convicted for the murders of 19-year-old Marcia McDonnell in February 2003 and 22-year-old Emile Delagrange in August 2004, and the attempted murder of 18-year-old Kate Sheedy sometime in 2004. For these crimes, which clearly took place after Millie's murder, Levi was already serving a whole life tariff, a custodial sentence handed out for the most heinous crimes, which meant that he would spend his entire life in jail. The detectives took a closer look at Levi's crimes and noted that some of them had taken place around the area that Millie was abducted from. They suspected Levi to be involved in Millie's murder as well and decided to question him.
Did you, Levi Belfield, have anything to do with the kidnap and murder of Millie Dowler?
No comment.
And you didn't deny it?
No comment.
You didn't say, it's not me? And at no stage over the last 2 days have you denied any involvement in these offences?
No comment.
Why is that, Levi?
No comment.
After a few minutes into the questioning, Levi was beginning to get uncomfortable with the line of questioning, which was evident from his body language and short responses.
Quite clearly that at one stage during that interview that he started to perspire quite heavily. He then took off his sweater.
His behaviour indicated to me that he was exceptionally uncomfortable with the line of questioning.
When I came out of the interview, I was convinced as I could be that he was the right man and that he was responsible.
The fact that Levi never denied killing Millie, that he was somehow connected to her murder. But this wasn't enough. They needed something solid, and for that, they reached out to Levi's past lovers. Joanna, an ex-partner of Levi, shared her disturbing experience with him and told how dangerous he was as a person. One of Levi's known surviving victims, Kate Sheedy, shared her nightmarish story as well. She stated that she was unaware that Levi had been following her in his white van while she was in the bus, and as soon as she got off the bus and walked into an isolated area, Levi rammed his van into her.
I do remember feeling the impact, just being completely winded. When it first hit me, just like, I don't even know if I made any sound, I think barely. It then sort of reversed straight back over the same area until it was completely over my body. I just felt completely crushed.
After some turbulence and a few stir-ups, there was finally some valuable progress being made in the investigation into Millie's murder. However, things turned shaky once again in 2006, when a man named Gary Farr of Retford, Nottinghamshire, started sending emails to Millie's parents and friends repeatedly. In those emails, Gary claimed that Millie was still alive. He said that she had been smuggled out of the country to work as an entertainer at nightclubs in Poland. He even claimed that Millie's death was merely a facade to cover up what actually had happened. As a result of these misleading emails, Gary was sectioned indefinitely under the Mental Health Act on October 19, 2006, for being a serious psychological danger to the public after admitting a charge of harassment. A confirmatory investigation was launched in the following years, and on March 30, 2010, Levi was charged with Millie's abduction and murder, and as a result, an 8-year-old long search for Millie's murderer was finally over. On October 6, 2010, Levi appeared virtually in court via video and was formally charged with 1 count of attempted abduction, 1 count of abduction, 1 count of disposal of evidence, and 1 count of murder. Before the trial began, Justice Secretary Kenneth Clark rejected calls for a review of Levi's past criminal cases. Justice Kenneth said that, While Levi had been convicted of previous murders, he had to be presumed innocent in Millie's case and be found guilty by a jury in a full court process. He believed that bringing up Levi's charges for the murders of Marcia McDonnell and Emile Delagrange and the attempted murder of Kate Sheedy would prejudice the trial. To keep that from happening, the court did not allow evidence to be introduced of Levi's obsession with schoolgirls and his attempt to abduct and assault them. Levi's trial began on May 10, 2011, and concluded 6 weeks later on June 23, 2011, with the jury finding him guilty. Levi was handed another life sentence on Friday, June 24, 2011, for abducting and murdering Millie Dowler. During the course of Levi's trial in Millie's case, another old case was brought to light. Levi was being suspected of an attempted abduction of an 11-year-old girl named Rachel Collis. The incident allegedly took place in 2002, on March 20th, when Rachel was offered a lift by a man in a red car in the Walton area. However, the request for Levi's trial on this case was dismissed due to newspapers publishing articles with preconceived notions, but the judge ordered that the charge should remain on file so it can be properly investigated later. After Levi's sentencing, the Dowler family strongly criticized the treatment they faced during the trial. Millie's sister Gemma described the day that her parents were cross-examined by Levi's defense lawyer as the worst day of her life.
The way they can portray my lovely sister as a depressed teenager has shocked me terribly. The worst part being that she isn't here to defend herself. To have to listen to that was emotionally scarring. The scale seemed to be tipped so much towards the defendant rather than us, the family who have suffered an almighty loss. It feels like we are the criminals and our family has been on trial. The past 9 years have tested our relationship as a family. There have been some extremely bad days, but we still manage some good days. Sadly, it is those good days when we realise that there is someone missing. And then I will spend the rest of the next day feeling guilty for enjoying myself. In my eyes, justice is an eye for an eye. You brutally murder someone, you should pay the ultimate price, a life for a life. So in my eyes, no real justice has been done. He took away my beautiful sister and he will now spend the rest of his time living off of taxpayers' money.
Sally, Millie's mother, told reporters that the trial had been a truly awful experience for her and her family. She said that they had to hear Millie's name being defamed in court, as Levi's defense lawyers tried to portray Millie as an unhappy, depressed young girl. Sally reassured that Millie was none of those things at all. She was a happy, vivacious, fun-loving girl.
At last, the man responsible for the cruel murder of our darling daughter so many years ago has been found guilty. However, for us, the trial has been a truly awful experience. We have felt that our family, who have already suffered so much, has been on trial as much as Mr. Belfield. To actually see that man in court, a man capable of such a vile and inhuman crime, has been grotesque and distressing for us. The length the system goes to protect his human rights seems so unfair compared to what we as a family have had to endure. I hope, whilst he is in prison, he is treated with the same brutality he dealt out to his victims, and that his life is a living hell.
Sally was upset that her family's life had been scrutinized and laid open for everyone to inspect. The Dowlers were snatched of their right to privacy and made to sit through the painful trial, day after day, in order to get an evil man convicted of their beloved Millie's brutal murder. Bob, Millie's father, criticized how Levi refused to appear physically in court and to give evidence for his sentencing. He was disgusted by the fact that he was questioned about his relationship with his own daughter. Bob added that his family had to pay too high a price for Levi's conviction.
Pleased that a guilty verdict has been delivered by the jury and that Levi Belfield has been convicted of the murder of our daughter. However, we do not see this as true justice for Millie, merely a criminal conviction. My family has had to pay too high a price for this conviction. The trial has been a truly mentally scarring experience on an unimaginable scale. You'd have had to have been there to truly understand. Things that you would not believe could ever happen did in fact happen. The defence inferences about myself and my wife were hugely distressing. And yet again, Belfield has been spineless and gutless by not attending his sentencing in court. Thank goodness that we have so many close and wider family members and friends who have supported us through the past 9 years. Tomorrow, Saturday the 25th of June, would have been Millie's 23rd birthday. And as always, we will remember the happy, fun-loving and talented girl that she was, but who was never allowed to fulfil her potential. This is a gap in our lives that can never be filled.
Bob was hurt that the trial had been a truly mentally scarring experience for him and his family. Bob also revealed that when he and his family were being questioned, it made them feel as if they were the ones on trial, not Levi. Bob further shamed the judicial system for being so loaded in favor of the perpetrator of the crime. When the news that the Dowlers were mistreated and harshly cross-examined in the courtroom broke, it led to a debate over how victims and witnesses were treated in court. On July 4, 2011, it was discovered that Millie's voicemails had been accessed and altered by journalists working for a newspaper that went by the name of News of the World. The newspaper's private investigator, Glenn Muclair, was particularly criticized. It was revealed that during the police investigation into the newspaper's phone hacking activities, detectives discovered that journalists had deleted some messages in Millie's voicemail box, which could have been potential evidence in Millie's case. They did so because the mailbox was full, and they wanted to free up space for new messages so they could listen to them. This was the reason why, back in 2002, after noticing activity in Millie's voicemail box, the Dowler family thought that Millie was still alive, even after her disappearance, which, as it turned out, was not the case at all. The phone hacking scandal earned the anger of the Prime Minister, David Cameron, who called it a truly dreadful act. In response to the British public's outcry, several inquiries were conducted into phone hacking and media ethics. The newspaper itself was closed in 2011 as a direct result of the outrage. The Prime Minister David Cameron sat down with Millie's family to have a discussion over the press hacking incident.
3 long years have passed since my meeting with David Cameron and the other party leaders. We were pleased he was prepared to initiate the Leveson inquiry into press ethics. However, I have not forgotten the promises that were made to my family and all of the other victims of press intrusion.
Bob and Sally, Millie's parents, announced they would pursue a claim for damages against the News of the World. In September 2011, it was reported that the Dowler family had been offered £2 million in personal damages. In January 12th, it was reported that Surrey police and other police forces were made aware soon after Millie's death that News of the World staff had accessed her voicemail box, but the detectives did not publicly address this information. Instead, a senior Surrey officer invited the newspaper staff to a meeting to discuss the case and settle things in secret. Millie's family felt even more cheated after learning about this situation. A red Daewoo Nexia, which was photographed driving past the same camera that captured Millie shortly after she was abducted, belonged to Levi's then-girlfriend Emma Mills. Levi said that he was driving the car at that time. On January 27, 2016, Surrey police announced that Levi had admitted to the abduction, assault, and murder of Millie Dowler. However, on February 12, 2016, Levi changed his story and declined that he had ever confessed to assaulting and murdering Millie. Millie's death had a great impact on her parents, Bob and Sally. Even though their beloved daughter was now gone, they wanted to make sure that nothing similar would happen to any other child. Sally and Bob launched a charity called Millie's Fund on the day of her memorial service. The charity provided risk assessment advice to teenagers, youth workers, and educators, and aimed at promoting public safety of children and young people. About a couple of years after Millie's body was discovered, Heathside School, where Millie was a student once, gathered a team together and built a memorial garden for Millie and named it Amanda Dowler Memorial Garden. It followed a paved pattern around borders planted with flowers and shrubs and had benches for people to stop by and remember Millie. Sally and Bob Dowler, together with her sister Gemma, were present at the moving ceremony when the garden was first opened for the public. The school staff and some governors also attended. The Reverend Nick Whitehead concluded the official opening with a prayer and a blessing. The principal thanked all the individuals, businesses, and organizations that offered a helping hand in converting the dream of making a memorial garden for Millie into a reality. School principal Glenn Willoughby said that he believed that a lot of people in Walton needed a place of peace and tranquility. At the school, the students and staff can visit to remember Millie and to have some space and time to reflect on anything that may be on their mind. On June 29, 2017, Gemma, Millie's sister, released a book dedicated to Millie entitled it My Sister Millie.
I think that when we first lost Millie, I didn't realise how lovely our family was. And so that's what has kept me fighting all of this time. And the only book I wanted to write would have been from love and my courage as well. And to make sure that when my children read about it, not that I have them in the future, they will be able to read about it through the words that I've chosen rather than a newspaper.
Gemma wrote the book in loving memory of her little sister, and to express how much she missed her. In the book, Gemma talked about how Millie's chance at having a beautiful childhood and life was snatched away from her, and how it impacted the Dowler family.
And at the centre of it all, a young teenager with her whole life ahead of her, taken in the most awful way.
Gemma also shed light on her family's journey of going from extreme pain to healing and achieving closure. It came as cold comfort to the Dowlers and the family of Levi's other victims that he will never be free again. Levi became the only person ever to have been handed 2 separate whole-life tariffs in British history. Levi is behind bars at HM Prison, Franklin, in County Durham. The prison is commonly referred to as the Monster Mansion, due to many of its inmates being convicted murderers and high risk in general. Levi has now converted to Islam and now goes by the name Yusuf Rahim. But no matter what he does, he will never set foot out in the free world. Even after more than 20 years of Millie's disappearance, Hannah McDonald, Millie's best friend from school, is still close to Millie's family. For years, Hannah bottled up her grief thinking about how her best friend was robbed of a wonderful life. Hannah still misses Millie, who will always hold a special place in her heart. Do you think there are any more unsolved murders that Belfield might have committed? How do you think the detectives handled Millie's case? Could they have been more efficient? Let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. If there's a case you'd like us to cover, don't hesitate to drop your recommendations in the comments section below. For more captivating true crime stories, like, share, and subscribe to our channel.